My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 63 years old, though lately I feel older, aged not only by time, but by the ache of a house that suddenly breathes too loudly when you are the only one inside it. 3 weeks ago, I buried my husband of 38 years, Harold. We built this house together. We raised our children within its walls. We watched the seasons change through the kitchen window, summer thunderstorms rolling in, autumn leaves drifting past the fence, winters heavy with silence. On spring mornings, the smell of wet soil would drift in as Harold opened the back door to "let the day settle," he used to say. As if daylight were a guest we welcomed politely. In the evenings, we talked in the living room until the lamps burned low, sometimes about bills, sometimes about dreams. We never had grand or glamorous plans. Our promises were small and durable. A weekend by the lake, repainting the porch, visiting the botanical garden in June. Every spring, Harold dug holes for roses while I followed behind, patting soil around their roots. Red roses for me, yellow for him. When the blooms opened, the yard looked like a conversation, his sunshine answering my fire. But grief is a thief, and it steals in increments. First the laughter disappears. Then the list of things to do becomes a list of things to survive. I learned that casseroles can spoil while condolences remain untouched, that silence has weight, that a house remembers how many chairs used to be pulled out at dinner. On a quiet Tuesday morning, with funeral flowers still wilting in their vases, the calls began. "Mom, we need to talk about the house," my son Michael said. No hello, no small talk. His tone was sharp, the same one he used years ago when convincing me to send more money during college. Back then, I convinced myself it was ambition speaking. Now I heard something else. Expectation dressed as duty. I stood in the kitchen, holding a mug that read, "World's Best Grandma," a gift from my granddaughter Sophie. The coffee inside had gone cold. In that moment, nothing felt familiar. Not the mug, not the room, not even the tired face staring back at me in the hallway mirror. And when I finally understood what Michael and my daughter Laura were planning, when I realized their kindness was strategy, not love, something in me shifted. Perhaps it broke, or perhaps for the first time in my life, something finally woke up. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about reclaiming your voice when others expect silence. It's about honoring the life you built, even if your children no longer respect it. The next morning, Michael called again. "Mom," he began, "Laura and I had dinner last night. We talked about your situation. It's not sustainable. That house is too big for you. It's time to think about next steps." Through the window, I watched the herb garden Harold once tended. The mint had colonized the bed like a rumor. Rosemary bristled into a thicket. Time crept between the bricks as if stitching the path back together without us. "There is no mortgage," I said flatly. He paused. Then came a laugh. Harold had once laughed like that too, but with warmth. Michael's version carried only calculation. "Mom, you don't have to pretend. Dad's pension can't possibly cover your medications. We're worried." But they weren't worried. They were circling. He launched into his pitch like a salesman after a long lunch. He and his wife had their eyes on a colonial on Maple Street. Good schools, mature trees, an office he could finally focus in. "Laura," he added, was struggling with Sophie's tuition. "If we sell your house," he said brightly, "it'll be a win-win. A win for them. And where exactly would I go?" I asked. "That's the best part," he said. "Laura has a finished basement. You'd have your own entrance, your own bathroom. Cozy. Sophie could keep you company when she's home. Maybe you could help with meals. You know how Laura struggles." He made it sound like an upgrade, but I remembered Thanksgiving. That same basement had flooded twice, and last year, I'd been seated downstairs alone while the rest of the family dined upstairs to keep the noise down. I could hear their laughter through the ceiling, like a party I hadn't been invited to in my own life. That evening, Laura's message arrived. "Mom, Michael told me about the house. I know it's hard, but it's for the best. Sophie's so excited to have Grandma nearby. Can't wait to talk details." Details. As if grief had a project timeline. I set the phone down and looked around the kitchen. The casseroles brought after the funeral were untouched. The condolence cards unopened, lined like small headstones on the buffet. I whispered the words aloud for the first time since Harold's death. I am not a burden. I am not invisible. Something steadied inside me. The next morning, I stepped into Harold's study. His scent still lingered, aged paper, pipe tobacco, and aftershave. Sunlight laid a neat rectangle across his desk, as if the day itself were waiting for instructions. I opened the bottom drawer, the one he called boring. Beneath tax files lay a navy blue folder, heavier than I expected. Inside, bank statements, investments, and a deed. Spain, Marbella. Photos slipped out. A whitewashed villa with blue shutters, a terrace curved like a smile, lemon trees bright against the sun, shadows of climbing bougainvillea on stucco walls. On the back of one photo, in Harold's handwriting, a place where no one needs anything from us. Just peace. Tucked between the papers was a sealed envelope. My name on the front. My dearest Evelyn, it began. If you're reading this, then the silence I tried to shield you from has arrived. I know our children. I love them, but I know them. They'll circle you, convinced they know best. But they don't. You are not fragile. Everything we built, it's yours. Not to defend, to live. Go to the house. Choose yourself. And when you sit on that terrace, remember that I always believed in your strength. Love, Harold. I read it once, a tremor. Twice. Clarity lifting out of grief like a shoreline appearing through fog. A third time, resolve. By the end, I knew exactly what I had to do. 2 days later, I sat across from Margaret Lane, Harold's longtime attorney. The office smelled of paper and peppermint tea. A jade plant thrived on the windowsill like proof that careful tending works. Your husband was meticulous, Margaret said gently, unfolding documents. All assets, the house, the investments, the villa, are in your name. The only inheritance your children receive is the life insurance. I exhaled. He had known. Margaret slid another envelope across the desk. He also opened a separate account. He called it your Independence Fund, $50,000, for when, in his words, Evelyn finally lives for herself. Tears stung my eyes. I hadn't realized how hungry I was for permission that was already mine. And the villa? I asked, paid in full. Maintained locally. You could move tomorrow. The phrase landed like freedom. For the first time in years, someone spoke of my future without trying to control it. Yes, I said. It's time. The moving truck arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. At the same moment, Michael's car pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, folders under his arm, tie knotted for battle. The sight of boxes being carried past him rearranged his face. Mom, what is this? He demanded. Good morning, Michael, I replied. I'm moving some things. He brushed past me, scanning the hallway. Those are my boxes, my childhood things. Why are you packing them? Because memories are precious, I said, and I won't be needing them where I'm going. You haven't even signed the sale documents yet. Gregory's client expects an answer by noon. I tilted my head. Tell me, Michael, did you and Laura already divide the money from this imaginary sale? Did you calculate phantom mortgages and split what was left? He looked away, the way people do when the script in their head stops matching the scene they're in. You assumed I was helpless. Did it occur to you to ask what your father's pension provides? Or whether I even wanted to leave the home we built? Mom, we were only trying to help. No, I said. You were trying to manage me like an entry on a spreadsheet. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. I pressed speaker. Mom, what is this madness? Laura's voice crackled. A truck just delivered that old piano to my house. I don't want it. The piano you begged for at 8 years old? I asked. I thought you wanted to keep the memories. Her breath caught. Michael says you're not selling the house. You can't afford... I can afford more than you ever imagined. Silence extended the length of the hallway. Then softly. I'm leaving. Not for your basement, but because I remembered who I was. Before I became a convenience. Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice. Where will you even go? Somewhere your father chose for me, I said. A place where peace isn't a favor I have to earn. I closed the door gently. The movers carried the last box to the truck, and I carried my name back to myself. 12 hours later, I boarded a flight to Madrid. I took the window, Harold's favorite spot. The Atlantic below looked stitched with silver thread. Clouds opened and closed like slow doors. When the customs officer asked, "Purpose of visit?" I answered, "Starting over," and it felt remarkably like telling the truth. Outside arrivals, a woman held a sign with my name. "Señora Carter?" she asked, then pulled me into a warm, practical embrace. "I'm Isabella Cruz. Your husband said you would make this house come alive." We drove south with the windows cracked. Olive groves rolled by like green waves frozen mid-crest. White villages clung to hillsides. The light turned everything it touched into a postcard. When we reached the villa, I went very still. Whitewashed walls, blue shutters, bougainvillea spilling over the gate. Beyond the terrace, the Mediterranean, an open book. Isabella pressed a brass key into my palm. He said this was your reward for a life well lived. That first night, I stood on the terrace with a glass of wine. Waves stitched themselves to the shore, unbothered by my astonishment. Somewhere, a dog barked twice and then thought better of it. For the first time since Harold's death, I felt not hollow, but whole. Days arranged themselves with gentle logic. Mornings, I walked to the bakery. The owner, Marta, learned my name and added an extra roll, por suerte. I practiced Spanish with a stubborn kindness toward myself, celebrating small victories like ordering coffee without apologies. Afternoons, I watered the garden, trimmed back the bougainvillea, learned the stubborn personalities of Mediterranean herbs. Evenings, I wrote in a journal Harold had never seen, letting words unspool like thread from a spool I hadn't realized was still full. Grief came too, but it changed shape. In this place, sorrow did not corner me. It sat beside me and watched the sea. Some nights I played the old songs we loved on my phone and let memory sing harmony. Other nights I simply listened to the waves and believed Harold could hear them with me. On the fourth day, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in months. Sophie. "Grandma," she said, voice trembling. "I just found out you've been paying for my college. Mom never told me. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't need credit," I whispered. "I only wanted to help." "I let them convince me you were fragile," she said. "That I shouldn't bother you. But I wasn't giving you space. I was abandoning you. I'm so sorry." Tears pressed hot against my eyes, but my voice stayed steady. "You're here now. That's what matters. Can I come see you? Spring breaks in 3 weeks. I don't want Cancun. I want Spain. I want to know you. The real you." "Yes," I said, surprising myself with how easily the word arrived. "Come." 3 weeks later, I waited at Malaga airport. Travelers spilled through the sliding doors like tide. Then I saw her, hair in a loose bun, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes scanning until they caught mine. "Grandma," she cried, running into my arms. Her hug was strong, unfiltered, real. On the drive, Sophie pressed her face to the window, marveling at the serrated blue of distant mountains. "This is where Grandpa wanted you? He knew I'd need this place," I said. We ate dinner on the terrace. Grilled fish, tomatoes sweet as an apology, bread still warm from Marta's oven. "Tell me about your life here," she said between bites. "I want to know everything, the mornings, the neighbors, what the sea sounds like at 3 a.m. For the first time in years, someone wasn't asking what I could give. They were asking who I was. Over the next days, we built a rhythm that felt like discovery. We visited the market and counted words I could say without thinking. We learned the bus schedule badly and laughed when we went the wrong direction and still ended up somewhere lovely. On the beach, Sophie confessed, "I don't want to go back to pretending. I want to stay, at least for a while." "Then stay," I said. "We'll figure it out together." One afternoon, as gulls argued above the rocks, Sophie took my hand. "Grandma," she said quietly, "I read Dad's text in December. He told Mom to push you on selling the house. He said if you moved into the basement, they could unlock equity. He called you the bottleneck. I didn't know what to say. I'm ashamed I said nothing. I tangled my fingers with hers. Silence is a habit we can unlearn, I said. Today we speak. That evening, Sophie called her mother. I'm safe, she said. I'm with Grandma, and I'm staying a little longer. I need to know the person who paid my tuition without asking for a receipt. The line went quiet, and then confusing. But Sophie stood steady, and when she hung up, the C sounded like approval. Because family isn't built on guilt, or obligation, or inheritance. It's built on presence, on honesty, on love that asks for nothing but gives everything. I used to believe keeping the peace meant absorbing the blows. Now I understand peace is a boundary that, Hulsan, if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been treated as a burden by the very people you gave everything to, if you've ever been told your life is a line item to be optimized. Remember this, it is never too late to choose yourself, never too late to begin again, never too late to be seen. On my last night before Sophie's classes resume online from our small table by the window, we sit on the terrace with tea. The lemons glint like soft lanterns in the dark. I think of Harold's letter, of his faith in my strength, of the villa he chose so that I would remember that my life belongs to me. The waves keep their appointment with the shore. The sky scatters stars like quiet affirmations. I take a breath that reaches all the way down. Thank you, I say aloud. To Harold, to this house, to the part of me that finally answered when my own name was called. And if my story speaks to you, share it. Let someone you love hear it, because sometimes the courage to start over begins with knowing you are not alone. In the weeks that follow, I keep a list on the refrigerator titled Small Braveries. I write down the ordinary acts that once felt impossible. I change a light bulb without calling anyone. I ask the fishmonger for the cut I actually want. I tell the doctor I prefer mornings. I say no to a favor that arrives wrapped in guilt. I say yes to a walk when the wind is high. I hum in the market. I sleep in the middle of the bed. Sophie adds her own. She writes a paper about intergenerational courage. She learns to make tortilla española from Isabella. She calls me not for help but for joy. We plant a new rose bush near the terrace, red and yellow grafted together, 2 lives braided, blooming on the same stem. When the first blossom opens, I clip it and set it in water on the kitchen counter. The house smells faintly of morning rain and lemon peel. I touch the petals and think, I am not starting over from nothing. I am starting over from wisdom. And each time doubt whispers, I remind myself, choosing myself is not abandoning others. It is refusing to abandon the person I have always been. If Evelyn's story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video to show your support. Share your own thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Your words might give courage to someone else. And if you believe in stories that remind us it's never too late to choose ourselves, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Most importantly, share this video with someone you love, because sometimes the courage to start over begins with hearing the right story at the right time.